My name's Jeanne Phillips, and just so grateful that you're here. So why don't we just start off with you maybe introducing yourself and tell us a little about who you are and what you do.
Okay, my name is Lawrence Brock, Dr. Lawrence Brock. I love to be called doctor. I do spiritual counseling and healing. I do, within that, it really ranges from more traditional counseling to very non-traditional spiritual healing, depending on the person. I do business consulting within there. I do family stuff, work with kids, work with grown-ups, a lot of different things. Sometimes people come to me more with medical issues or physical issues. Sometimes it's more emotional, sometimes spiritual. Most people just want things to be going better in their life and to feel better emotionally. So, and that's kind of cool. I work online or on the phone, so I get to have clients all over the world. That's really kind of fun too.
I connected with you through the Near-Death Experiencer Facebook group, and would really like to hear about your experience and what your perspective is on death and dying, what it was prior, and how it might have changed. So just take us back to what actually happened that day and what you experienced.
Okay, well, I had been living in Colorado, in Longmont, Colorado, working in a restaurant, and I drove back that day with my friend back to Rye Brook, New York, in the suburbs of New York City, where my parents lived and where I grew up, with my friend who I lived with in Colorado. We were roommates. He was a kid, I knew from childhood. So we found out about a party and we went to the party. I was definitely drinking and getting high. So I wasn't that high and felt like I maybe could drive home, maybe couldn't. But in those days, the world, perspective about that was very different than it is now. And I asked my friend to drive me back to my parents' house, partially because there was the woman who was having the party I was interested in connecting with, and I thought, I could leave my car here, I could play it extra safe and come back the next day and talk to her. When I was almost back to my parents' house, I realized my sister, who was staying at my parents' house also, needed the car the next morning for work, so I asked my friend to drive me back to the party. He protested a little bit, but I explained my situation and part of the reason I wanted to go back there the next day. But during that time, I took another drug that didn't kick in, so I wasn't really thinking about it. So I a little bit remember leaving the party, and then the next thing I remember, I was out of my body after the car accident, and I was floating above. I saw my body. It was leaning against a tree. There was a police officer leaning over me. I assume he took me out of the car. I never followed up on that to find out. And I was in the white light. It wasn't like a tunnel like some people say, but I was in this white light that felt just really nice. Like everything seemed fine, even though I saw my body smashed and injured. It didn't even seem to me like there was a problem at all, actually. Then I heard a voice say to me from behind me, you have to go back, your father wants you to stay. And it just seemed like everything was so okay that I went back into my body and woke up 3 days later. My experience of being in the white light was very more of a feeling thing. There was a lot of I've always been trying to figure out how to explain it, but it's just like an inner knowing that wasn't very mental, let's say. It was, I could say it was more in my heart, but that wouldn't really describe it either. But that would be closer to the experience than knowing something in my head. after that, I met this person who was a Sufi sheikh, and he started talking to me about some things. And when he did, the words he said really described my experience. One was he would talk about the ocean of divine love and benevolence, which is an Islamic saying that, like, oh, that's what I was in. I was in the ocean, or the white light of divine love and benevolence. The other thing he started talking about was, even though he was Islamic, started talking about Jesus and Mary, and then I get, oh, that's the voice that told me I needed to go back, was Jesus. So it was sort of like putting the words on after the fact, which really is true to who I am. I'm a very kinesthetic, intuitive person, and a lot of times I don't know what I know. I don't know exactly how to put it into words. So that would, and sometimes I wonder, I would think more happened after that, because I was unconscious for 3 days, and that my experience of that in time was that it was just a few minutes, what I just described. So, when I came to, I remember I was sort of, the 3 days I was like in and out of consciousness. And I do remember telling someone that I had taken some drugs before and not to give me more drugs or something like that. And then after, when I came all the way to, I just remember a nurse saying it was touch and go for a while. And I still have an image of the look on the neurologist's face saying how lucky I was. He didn't say to be alive, but when he said that, I assumed that that's what he meant.
That's really powerful. And I hear the struggle to find the words to really give a good picture of that, the impact of the experience, the feeling experience. I've had a lot of experiences that don't fit as well. And it's one of the more difficult things to find the words that really convey how big it is and the feeling part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned how to do that because I also do it for work, but even telling people I can't find the words right away, they seem to understand. And, the feeling part of it, I think in anything describing any spiritual experience, it's important to do that because it is bigger than our words. I have a friend, well, he's passed away, but he used to say, if you can put your finger on it, it's not it. And that's this. So if we could pin it down, then it would be in the physical level. It wouldn't be spiritual, which is this, this thing that, and even when I say that, start to describe the bigness, it's like my heart opens up and it's just this wonderful feeling of love. And then it's like, it's hard to sometimes, am I there? Am I here? Am I there? And then it's like, well, oh yeah, I can just relax and allow both of those things.
Yeah, that's great. Now, did you have experiences prior to this near-death experiences that didn't quite fit, or did that all occur after?
I did have some before. I guess the one that was very obviously seeing something was I was in the movies in New York City, and I saw my grandfather sitting in the front row who had passed away a few years before. And he was a unique-looking person, and I actually walked on purpose right in front of him, and it was like, I didn't know exactly what to make of it, but he was like 6'3", weighed like 300 pounds, and he would always wear a super nice suit and a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. So it was a unique look. It wouldn't be, and plus the movie I was seeing, I mean, everyone else was in jeans type of, it wasn't he was very formal. So I didn't know what to make of it. I had other things. Sometimes I would see people's auras, and I remember one time my parents sent me to therapy when I was young, and I mentioned it to the therapist, and he dismissed it as he asked me if I did any psychedelic drugs, and it was like, I've sort of learned, I don't know, in a certain way I've always know that everyone connects to that stuff, but you can't really talk about it. And I mean, I'm so happy that the near-death experience thing is popular because now I can talk about it. I don't have to feel like part of me is wrong or something. It's really a nice thing.
I agree. I've been very quiet about all my experiences most of my life, just shared with a couple of close friends, but it has changed, and people are much more open, and they're also very curious, which is just a wonderful thing, and I think is going to help all of us to navigate a lot of change that's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yes. I mean, my experience over the years is when I do open up in an honest, open, vulnerable way, even back in those days, people were not so, I don't know, as, you know, my fears about it a lot of times were ill-founded because, you know, so I've had my healing and counseling practice for a long time. It's become much more mystical and spiritual, but there was always stuff that would happen, and sometimes people would come see me who were not coming for that aspect of it, more the physical things I did. And a number of times I've had to explain to people, and the times I've decided, well, I'm just going to go for it and see, I've been surprised how open people, I can't think of the word, but like in Harry Potter, they use for the humans, I forget the word they use, but
Muggles, yeah.
The Muggles, right?
The Muggles, right?
So to describe it to the Muggles, and then everyone, I think everyone relates to it because it's just part of who we are. That's all. So.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Did you have any fear or anxiety about death in general prior to your experience, and did that change after, or was it just kind of a consistent knowing that you had your whole life?
I was in my early 20s, so you're asking, I did not have anything about that. It's like you did
At that age, right?
Yeah, so it's even when you say that now, part of me is afraid of death, but then there's a part that knows. I think most of the time I have a choice. Like, am I going to connect into that fear, or am I going to connect into the loving? And sometimes I just naturally connect into the loving. Sometimes it's like I have to make an effort to do that. So I'm not really afraid of death, but I'm definitely afraid of a slow dying, if that were to pain or suffering and all that stuff. So for a while, my practice involved being with a lot of people that were going to pass away pretty soon, and definitely the people that are close to dying, most of them seem to find a certain peace inside as they start to connect. I mean, I remember this one person, he had a living will, so he didn't want to have any machines keeping him alive, and he wanted to stay at home. And I remember standing in the doorway of the room where he was, and he was unconscious, and there was this really white light around him. And it was funny to watch him. He was a very serious person before this happened, and as he got sick, he turned into this very loving person. It was kind of interesting. But so this white light would be around him, and then if the family members would come in, that would change because they were so worried. So it looked to me, I mean, he was unconscious, so I didn't know what he was thinking consciously, but he just had this beautiful white light around him that was really beautiful, and it just dimmed when his family members came in because they were so upset.
You say you have energy healing gifts, and how did it develop for you, and did things change after your near-death experience?
Yes, I can look back and see hints of it, but I definitely noticed a couple of things happen. One is I noticed my hands would become warm when I touched people. So the reference is very different. Like now it might happen and all people would have a place to think about it. Back then people didn't really talk about it. And I say this a lot. Really, my reference for these mystical, metaphysical, and spiritual things was from Star Trek. That was what I knew, and it was fictional. But I noticed touching people, my hands would become warm, and I just started playing around with that, not even knowing what to do with that. Also, one time I prayed for a friend's father. Actually, it was my friend's grandfather, but I was close with the father, and I said to him, I'm going to pray for the grandfather. And I felt something happen. And the next time I saw him, the grandfather went from going to be passing away like any moment to living for definitely months more. And right. And, I felt something happen again in my mind. I didn't, it's like, but then when I saw the father, he said, I think something happened when you prayed, because it happened right then. I said, I know what you mean. I felt that same thing. So that was sort of the beginning. And in one way, the biggest change in my near-death experiences, it just got me on this path of meeting all these people. I met the Sufi sheikh. I met other people that did these really miraculous things. And, so I started learning, and I definitely had a sensitivity. The Sufi sheikh would say, yeah, you're a sensitive. And he would also always say, everything I asked him, he would always say, oh, you don't need to know that. And that seemed to be in line with not knowing how to describe my near-death experience. That there's, and what I've discovered is that you got to hold that knowing back. It's almost like there's different kinds of knowing, and if you try to get your mind to know it too quickly, you ruin the really best part, which comes later on if you'll just let it go, So.
I think there's a natural progression with it all, as far as us being able to integrate all of those pieces.
Yeah.
I know with my experience, it wasn't a classic NDE. I don't know that I died. I was alone, but it was classic in the sense that it was very similar. It was the tunnel, connecting with the light, and the overwhelming being filled up. I described the unconditional love and acceptance like a verb. It wasn't so much of an emotion. It was filling me up from the inside out.
Yeah.
I had another experience a couple years after that with that same light. And what I remember from it was like I was looking at the sky, and it just peeled back like a curtain. And then the light was revealing itself behind the curtain. And I remember saying very clearly, I'm not ready yet. And it just is gently closed back up. And it's so interesting to kind of look back now and see my progression over the years, how I've opened back up and become more comfortable with it all. And just being able to talk about it is one piece of that.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have some place to go with your mind, so it's not like afraid, basically. And,
right.
I mean, in a certain way, when I work with people, that's what I do. I can, sort of figure out and sort of know intuitively how to guide them to connect to that energy, and then all sorts of really cool things happen.
That actually leads right into my next question, because I was going to ask you, what do you do in your daily life or your daily practice to keep your connection to the greater, what I call the greater reality, or what goes beyond this three-dimensional experience? And kind of tied to that, what do you suggest to other people? Like, how do you counsel other people to find that connection for themselves?
Well, the meditation I do, I think, is like a sort of the basic thing to do. It's, I mean, I have other tools. I have, on my YouTube channel, most of them I've made videos of for people, but the basic soul meditation, I would say, is a really good place to, you're saying this, but I also think the teachers are the places. So there's doing the meditation, there's a few writing exercises I do. I think journal writing is really, really important. And there are so many things, but those are the basics. I also still talk to someone who does what I do like once a week, even though it's usually only for a short time. It's sort of set up that you can't really do it for yourself as well. So you can't avoid your karma, basically, and avoid your lessons. And it's like sometimes it's so kind of frustrating because I see something and I have a very strong sense of what it is, and then it doesn't even register in my mind what to do or something like that. And then I would say a lot of people let the thing of having someone help them get in the way, because they want to do it themselves. And I sort of understand that, but it's all a gift from God. And if it's that part of I want to do it on my own, there's probably the egos involved instead of, the end result, which is to connect to God really and to connect to that love inside of you. That gift is like, don't let things get in the way, really.
To me, it feels like being able to let go of this idea that we have to know, it's like this outside pressure that we've kind of taken on from the world that says we should know ahead of time, or we should have it figured out, or we should be able to do it on our own, or we should, all of those messages that are preventing us from being able to connect. It's like you got to pick those pieces first. And you're right, having a reflection from somebody else is so helpful to be able to get it out of the way and kind of get yourself out of the way to then find that connection that's already there. It's just, it is difficult sometimes.
Yeah, everything is information. In one way, the way we look at things is through our own eyes, so we're not going to see something that's not in line with us. So if, whatever it is, it's, you see a flower, it might mean something to you. Even if someone's not being nice to me, I try to look at, is there information in there that I could use? And sometimes people are just not being nice, but you never know, So spirit or God, whatever you call that, is giving you this information all the time in every situation in your life, whether it's a good thing or a negative, and, somehow what can you learn? What can I learn? What can I get out of it? And, especially if you get feedback from your world a number of times that's similar, it's like, it must be there for a reason. So.
What do you say to people who don't have an experience to draw from?
Everyone has the experiences. It's sort of a matter of understanding that and looking at it. The thing with meditation is I've been meditating pretty much every day for 40 years, and like even today, it took a long time. The negative talking in my mind did not stop. I still felt a lot of energy come in, so at some point it was like I could focus on that. But even as the energy was coming in, that voice did not stop. So that's not, people think it's going to be, and, sitting, and sometimes it's like that, but I think it's important to do anyway. I can find a way to connect people to it. One way to do that is to perhaps find out what religion they were born, or just ways they could relate to it. And it ended up quantum physics was the way for her, which happens to be something I really like. So, I talked to her, and all of a sudden she goes, whoa, the room just filled up with purple light. But so it was sort of showing her where the path was to that, and then she got it. So probably the first thing to check with people would be through Jesus Christ, because that's, as far as the most people, that would be the way, but it's not always the way. And, the other thing is to check what religion they were born, because even if they don't like that, that's a lot of times what it is. There was someone in a class, and it ended up being Buddhism. And this person definitely was not born Buddhist. So, but it was interesting because, people look at the very practical part of Buddhism, but Buddha was a spiritual master, not that different from Jesus. And I explained this to her, and then all this energy came in. So she was sort of set the foundation for the Buddhist part of it. But, in Buddhism, they don't talk about the spiritual part very much. And I even said to her, but the reason that really high Buddhist masters are all smiling is because his energy's flowing in. And so she got it and was like, wow, I could see her face light up. So there's usually some way, whatever it is. A lot of that I learned about this stuff was from playing sports. Also, my dad had an electrical contracting business, watching the electricians, how, these guys, it was amazing how focused they were, and some of them could just fix things. They didn't know how to fix them, so the spirit was coming in to them fixing. And, I had experiences playing basketball that were magical, as magical as healing someone, in its own way. So there's always some way people do it. Yeah.
Yeah. A little side note: my dad was an electrical engineer, so.
Oh, really?
Wow. Okay. There's a little.
Yeah, I mean, I love doing electrical work, and I also, for me, I was very good at math when I was in school, and even that, just everything has that mystical, magical thing in it. And I like to work with kids, and it's like, trying to get them to find that thing in them that is that thing. So, I'm using the word thing, but whatever they're passionate about, basically, and we try to find words, and it's more like learning from the inside out, where they're, whatever gets your heart going or gets your mojo going, again, right, part of it is finding the words people will accept, and whatever activates that thing inside of them. Yeah, I taught a class a while ago also. This woman was saying she's so spiritual, she wants to find her thing, and it ended up her thing was she really loved being a mother. And that was her thing. And then when she goes, oh yeah, and it was like such a relief to her to find, this practical thing that she loves so much was a spiritual thing. And that's very cool. So.
Yeah, it's a great way to find that doorway that they can then walk through themselves to have their own experiences.
Well, sometimes you got to open the doorway and give them a kick in the butt, but yes.
Yes. Yes. So what this kind of brings another question. It's like finding your joy and being connected and feeling the flow of that, which I feel is really so important all the time, but especially right now with all going out in the world. Everybody's scared of the coronavirus, and there's just so much chaos. A lot of people are stuck in their homes. What do you suggest people focus on right now in order to alleviate any fear or anxiety that they may be experiencing?
That is a really good question. I think that, so I have a 15-year-old daughter, and, she's doing school from home, and, it's like how to take those things that you're passionate about when this wasn't going on, and how do you translate it into, and it was nice because she hosts and the news and does a lot of the filming and editing for that at her school. And I said, why don't you do a news from home? And she actually said, that's a really good idea. Because most things I say to her, she gives me the teen face, like, how annoying. It's hard. There's also the part, there is a lot of strange energy around, so some way to clear that. Sometimes visualizing purple light around helps. And just watch your thinking and going into that. I mean, it's kind of, it almost has an apocalyptic feel to it. So yeah, I was doing a thing with some teens online, and a number of them said, yeah, it's like a movie. It is like a movie. It's like one of those movies, and it's, see, I say that, I start to feel like, I almost feel like crying, like a lot of sadness comes up and stuff. So the thing is that the part of us that is joyful and enthusiastic, that's who we really are. The other things are not really who we are. So, I mean, you're asking a really big question, but I think meditating is good. I do think journal writing is a great way to get your head on straight, really. That's really important.
The next one that comes to my mind is, what is my role in this as far as a potential good outcome? Where do I want to see this go, and how can I help that unfold? And that's where the mystical, energetic piece of this really, to me, feels so important now. It's like we've gotten to this point where we're starting to believe it and trust it more. And this is an opportunity to put it to practice. It's like walk that talk in a way that is magnificent and really empowering, and could change, I feel, not just the individual, but the whole collective, as far as what we feel that we are and how powerful that we know that we are, and being able to manifest that change.
You're talking about, I mean, being of service is another thing, helping people. Partially because my daughter, I do a lot of stuff with kids, and, I teach Sunday school, and do stuff at helping this, her school, and I'm on some committees at her school too, and it's nice because they're integrating mindfulness and other almost spiritual. They don't like to talk about spirituality, but they're, talking about passion-based learning, and these things that connecting to the spirit. In my mind, they don't want to use those words there, but that it's nice that people are open to it, and we are our brother and sister's keeper. So when you see someone in need of help, you help them, and I think that is so. Yeah, I take classes all the time, so writing about what is being of service. When I see something, again, that I think needs to be done, I move towards doing it. That's just part of who I am, and I think that's really important. And then hopefully you get that back in return, and it's nice. So
that natural instinct that you have to serve, does it help you to keep your connection open?
Yes, and sometimes it didn't. Well, I think it does help me stay connected to God and spirit. Yes, that part. When you first asked that, I'm, sometimes helping people, it involves setting energetic boundaries for yourself too, because they're doing what they're doing, and even, like I said, now there is a lot of kind of fear energy around, and it almost looks a lot of times as soon as I look, it's a little grayish. So it's like, I don't want to be a part of that part, but it's, I also, that same person who said about putting your finger on it said, if you're not taking stuff on once in a while, you're not doing enough. So if you're trying to play it safe all the time, where, you're so concerned about yourself, then, so there's a line here, but if you're back here, you want to be right on the line, basically. So and there's, the stuff from here, and sometimes you go into people's stuff because that's how you help them. And so that's how it is.
It's all just so fills me with hope, just listening to you talk and listening to both your stories and experiences, but also how you integrate all of that in your day-to-day life, I think is just very inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, it's good to hear.
The younger people coming up, they seem to have a different perspective on all of that, and a stronger connection coming in, I think, to this reality that, we're all trying to open up to and feel stronger with. But I was just wondering what your experience is with that, with the younger kids that you work with.
I think it's more a part of their world, and for my, they just talk about in the same way. So I had an experience with one of my clients when I had an office in Manhattan, and something happened, and basically at the end I was explaining to her what I saw. She said she was okay with it because of things she had seen in science fiction on TV. The kids, all the vampire shows, and there's so much of this metaphysical stuff in the stories they're exposed to. It's almost, to them, it's like kind of normal in a certain way. So yeah. But I do things with a church, and it's kind of cool to see the teens doing this kind of stuff, and I wish I knew about it, even though I had a hint there was something like that. And I was a teenager in the 1960s where people were first starting to explore this stuff, and but it's a real thing now, so.
The experiences that you've had since your near-death experience that you feel like you want to share, something that I didn't ask, that you would want to pass along to any listeners out there who might be feeling disconnected and afraid right now?
Who you are and what you are, to trust that is a good thing. How you feel like it should go together is probably more of who you are.
That's awesome. Just listening to you describe it that way kind of made me take a collective deep breath for everybody out there who may be listening, thinking, wow, I can trust myself to be able to know how to put these pieces together. And the answer that gives me chill bumps is yes. We
Right.
does. So I thank you for that.
Well, something I was chatting with someone who, actually a woman I met on a dating website because I'm trying to meet someone, but and she said something. She went to some, I don't even remember what, I don't want to go into the details of that, but she was told, she left this class or whatever, or she was told that everything she's done is wrong for all these years. And I'm saying, no, that just can't be, because everything you're doing is right. And it has to be. It has to be in line with who you are. It's just, you have this thing, you just can't operate outside of that. That's all. So everything in there, it's just, a lot of it is how do we put it together in our mind? What do we, how do we, like when I was working on getting my practice going, there were some things in there that, one of them I tell because it's kind of a cute story, was I kept feeling like, oh, I want a lot of pretty women to come see me. And I was very judgmental about, like, well, I'm doing this spiritual thing, and then, but I knew to trust that thing in me that was saying that. And then shortly after, there are these exercises to do to get the energy going, and I did that, and my practice really took off quickly. And then I met this woman who was a manicurist for all the high fashion magazines in Manhattan. So for about 3 years, almost all of my practice was models. And, there wasn't anything inappropriate about it, but something, I don't know if which caused which, if I just had a sense of what was going to happen, but that thing in me that likes that, or, it's not like eating too much ice cream that you like, but you have to have some discernment, but that thing where your heart's directing you, where your passion is, the things that you like, these are all pieces of the puzzle that are the puzzle of who you are.
Is it that I was sensing it's coming at me, or is it that I was playing a role in the drawing of that? And that's been a learning process as well. So,
right, and even thinking about it, it's like what you're saying is there a separation, or it's just all one thing? And some of these questions you can't really answer in a definitive way, but it's, that thing in you that I often say it's kind of a blessing and a curse. I can't really do things I don't enjoy. I'm just not very good at it, which is good. I'm doing things I enjoy, but then sometimes there's things I don't do that maybe I should. So I don't know.
Yeah, I can identify with that. That's really cool.
I have a son who's much older. He's an artist who makes a good living, and when he was choosing where to go to college, it was like, being a parent, it's like, oh my God, he's going to be a starving artist, and luckily he's not. So, and now my daughter's there. She's 15, and she's really good at pretty much whatever she does, and she goes, I don't know what I want to do. I go, you don't need to know. Just trying to get her to follow her passion of, whatever that is. It's an interesting process.
So like for everything and for everybody is to connect to and follow whatever your passion is, whatever your unique thing is. And I think part of the opportunity right now with this big slowdown is to be able to look at that more closely. The way the world was, we didn't really have time, or a lot of people didn't feel that they had to make the time to connect with that. So, it's kind of an invitation.
It is. I mean, I like spending time at home, and I've definitely, since last summer, I've been rushing around so much, and part of me in my mind keeps going, what do I have to go do? And it's like, well, no, I don't have to do anything. And it's like, oh, I can take more time to meditate. I can, I like to make videos and, even catch up on my laundry kind of thing. So yeah. So there is, I guess one thing to say is we do have these different parts of our consciousness, and there's information that comes, I guess one everyone can relate to is coming from your heart. And it's just really important to check in with that. There's also our physical information that we get, which would be more in the gut area. And these parts, like you want to consider all of them. Because a lot of times when we're thinking, we're not really putting it together the right way. but in our heart and in our gut, there's something sort of directing us in the right way. And sometimes it's hard to listen to because you don't know what it's, it's not like, oh, it's going to make money, or it's good, you don't know what the answer is for it, but it's still important to listen to those other, our other thoughts, the wisdom that's not in our brain.
And I think through the experience of doing it and following that intentionally, you learn to trust it, because a lot of times it is illogical. It goes against what you think should be happening, or the direction that your logical mind says is right. But then in the practice of following following the heart and the gut, it's like, you look back, it's like, wow, okay, that was unexpected, and that was really cool. And it starts to give you the confidence you need. And again, it kind of feels like another part of that invitation. Practice it now. Kind of thing.
It is that the thing of practicing is important. So I did my doctoral treatise on a breathing exercise, and part of the research was about mindfulness breathing. And, I came across studies. I mean, there was the one study I came across that was really quite profound, is that showed that doing mindfulness breathing, so practicing mindfulness, actually changes something physically in your brain. And now they can really see that it changes something in the areas of your brain where there's positive emotions and positive thoughts. So it makes that part of your brain grow more, which isn't growing in size, it just becomes denser. And the areas of our brain that go into negative thinking, negative emotions, become less dense, that is a really cool thing.
That, and that to me gives more hope, I think, to the people that need something concrete, if they haven't had an experience, or that everybody has, but they haven't been able to see it maybe in the way that connects to this greater reality. But giving you something concrete like that, it piques curiosity, I think. And then it's like, wow, okay, where's that leading, and what else might be possible? Well, this study they did MRIs, so it was real, before and after. People did 8 weeks of mindfulness practice. And so most of the people who did the mindfulness, it showed their brain changing in that way. And in the control group, no one changed that way. So it was really, really cool stuff. Right. Wow. That concrete part is, you got to. So when I work with people, and even when I interact with people, it's like I'm trying, like, how do you give someone's mind a way to go there? Part of it is I've learned about a lot of different traditions, and being very open to different traditions, I've learned about a lot of different religions. I've studied science, I've studied psychology, I love playing sports, the electricians, all these things, just observing people, that there is some way that everyone connects to this cool thing, and trusting that their experience is unique and that I can't fully understand it, but I know something in them knows it, and there's this magical thing, and all I need to do is sort of adjust the lock a little bit so it opens up. So they're sort of almost on the verge of that happening pretty much all the time, and it just needs a little extra oomph there. Awesome. And it's like every piece, I'm like, wow, thank you, because to me, you're modeling for everybody is how to take all of these experiences that you've had in your life personally, and then all of the learning you've had, and bring in what resonates the strongest and make it your own. It's like mold it into your message that feels most resonant with where you are and who you are. And I thought, like, that's brilliant. I love it. And you're talking about it and you're living it. And it's just such a great model, I think, for everybody to witness.
Thank you. Yeah, it always goes hand in hand, and that I think that's important. So I'm, being true to myself. I'm not, and I often tell people I don't have it down perfect, that's for sure. And I think that's part of the process too. I know the thing of helping people in that way, it would be good to define it. So even when I wrote my doctoral treatise, I had to come up with a concrete technique, and that's what prompted me to do it. Is I wanted to write my paper and and graduate. So it was, so then I started doing research of how to put it into words. I could probably do that with the type of therapy I do, but it's, my mind's going to think about it now. It is a good idea. So I've been in the process of writing a book for a long time. Perhaps within that is what it will teach. So it is really trust yourself and know that there's something really good inside of you. There is something in everyone that's really phenomenal and wonderful and magical and wise, and just trust that part. Yeah, and you take the next step as it appears, and then pay attention, and then love yourself some more, trust yourself some more, and yeah. One of the Sufi sayings that I really like is, trust in Allah, but tether your camel first, which means take care of yourself and trust that God is guiding you in the right way.